Imagine you are in a crowded room, surrounded by endless chatter, voices overlapping, and distractions pulling you in every direction. Everyone is speaking, but no one is truly listening. Now, picture yourself stepping away from the noise, into a quiet space where your mind finally breathes. In that silence, something shifts. Your thoughts settle, your awareness sharpens, and for the first time in a long while, you hear the voice that truly matters, your own. Have you ever wondered why we often regret the words we speak but rarely the silence we keep? Why do moments of quiet reflection bring us more clarity than hours of loud discussions? In a world that constantly demands our attention, could it be that the greatest wisdom lies in saying less? Think about the last time you were truly silent, not just quiet, but completely still in mind and speech. Was it uncomfortable? Or did you feel a sense of peace that words could never provide? Imagine what would happen if, instead of rushing to respond, you paused, observed, and let silence be your guide. Here's a simple example. Two people argue, each trying to prove their point. Their words grow louder, their emotions rise, but neither one truly hears the other. Now, imagine one of them simply stops talking, listens with presence, and allows space for understanding. The energy shifts. The silence speaks louder than words ever could. Welcome to Wisdom Woven, a place where deep insights meet the simplicity of silence. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribed. So, if you find value in these teachings, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. And most importantly, drop your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Silence is not emptiness. It is full of meaning. In Buddhism, silence is a sacred practice. The Buddha himself often responded to complex questions with silence, for he knew that words sometimes limit understanding rather than expand it. Silence does not mean weakness or ignorance. It is a sign of wisdom. It allows you to process emotions, observe without judgment, and choose your words with care. But in today's world, silence is misunderstood. Many see it as awkward or passive, yet it holds immense power. A silent mind is a focused mind, one that can see beyond illusions and distractions. It is in silence that we recognize our truest thoughts, free from external influence. When we embrace silence, we train ourselves to respond rather than react. In heated moments, instead of immediately speaking, we learn to pause. This simple act changes everything. It prevents regretful words, deepens relationships, and brings a sense of calm even in chaos. Buddhist monks dedicate their lives to silence, not just in speech but in thought. They practice mindful listening, allowing wisdom to arise naturally. Their silence is not empty, it is alive with awareness. They know that true understanding does not come from speaking more, but from listening deeply. Even in daily life, we can practice this. Before answering a question, take a breath. Before giving an opinion, observe. Before reacting to criticism, pause. Silence gives space for wisdom to emerge. It helps you see situations clearly, without the fog of emotions clouding your judgment. Imagine being in a disagreement. Instead of arguing back immediately, you remain silent, fully present. The other person feels heard, their anger softens, and the conversation shifts. Silence is not just about withholding words. It is about creating space for deeper connection. The modern world glorifies loudness. Social media, news, and entertainment encourage constant talking. But true power lies in those who can stay silent when needed. Silence demands presence. It requires inner strength. It teaches patience, self-control, and deep understanding. This is just the beginning. In the next parts, we will explore how silence shaped our thoughts, emotions, and even our relationships. We will uncover the Buddhist teachings that reveal why silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of wisdom. Stay with us, and let's walk this journey together. The art of observing without reacting. Silence is not just about closing your lips. It is about opening your mind. When you hear someone criticize you, what is your first reaction? Do you feel the urge to defend yourself, to prove them wrong? When someone praises you, do you immediately feel happy, as if your worth has increased? This is the nature of the mind. It reacts. It jumps from one emotion to another, pulled in every direction by words, events, and people. But what if you could remain still? What if you could observe everything without letting it shake you? Imagine sitting by a river. The water flows constantly, carrying leaves, sticks, and sometimes even dirt. You are sitting on the bank, watching. You do not jump into the river to catch every leaf. You do not try to stop the current. You simply observe. This is the art of watching without reacting. Life is like that river. Thoughts, emotions, and words from others are like the leaves flowing by. But most people do not sit on the bank. They are in the river, chasing every leaf, fighting the current, struggling against the flow. They hear an insult, and they drown in anger. They receive bad news, and they sink into worry. They hear praise, and they float away in pride. But a Zen mind stays on the shore. It watches. It understands that everything is temporary. When you observe without reacting, you gain control, not over others, but over yourself. And this is the greatest power of all. A traveler once asked the Buddha, "Master, people insult you. They challenge you. They try to make you angry. Why do you not react?" The Buddha smiled and asked, "If someone offers you a gift, but you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The traveler replied, "To the one who tried to give it." The Buddha said, "Then why should I accept their anger?" Think about this deeply. If someone throws words at you, and you do not pick them up, then they remain with the one who spoke them. If someone tries to provoke you, but you do not respond, then their anger has nowhere to go. It disappears on its own. This is the strength of silence. But silence is not suppression. It is not about pushing your emotions down. It is about understanding them. It is about watching them come and go without getting lost in them. Just like clouds in the sky, they drift in, they stay for a while, and then they pass. The sky does not hold on to them. Your mind should be the same. Many people think that reacting quickly makes them strong. They believe that having the last word means they have one. But true strength is in restraint. The one who can hold their silence in the face of provocation is far stronger than the one who speaks without thinking. A warrior once came to a Zen master, angry and full of pride. He said, "Master, I am powerful. I have won many battles. No one dares to challenge me. But I cannot control my anger. Teach me how to master it." The Zen master handed him a bowl of water and said, "Shake this." The warrior did, and the water became restless, spilling over the sides. The master then said, "Now hold it still." The warrior stopped shaking it, and slowly, the water settled. "Your mind is like this bowl," the master said. "If you keep shaking it with reactions, it will always be disturbed. But if you remain still, it will find its peace." Reactions are like ripples in water. The more we move, the more we disturb our own peace. When someone criticizes you, instead of reacting immediately, pause. Observe what is happening inside you. Do you feel anger rising? Do you feel the need to defend yourself? Just watch. See how quickly emotions change. One moment, you feel hurt. The next, you might feel the urge to attack back. But if you do not act on these emotions, they pass. They lose their power. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from how we respond to it. The world is full of noise, but silence is always available within. When you practice observing without reacting, you step outside the noise. You become the watcher, not the one caught in the storm. This is not easy. The mind will resist. It wants to react. It wants to fight, to prove, to win. But every time you pause instead of reacting, you train your mind. You strengthen it. And slowly, you begin to experience a deeper peace, a silence that no insult can disturb, no praise can shake. A great Zen master once said, "A wise man is like a mirror. He reflects everything but holds on to nothing." When people come to you with anger, do not absorb it. Let it pass through. When people come with praise, do not cling to it. Let it pass through. This is the way of balance. There is a saying, "Do not speak unless it improves the silence." Before reacting, ask yourself, will my words at peace, or will they create more noise? If the answer is noise, then silence is the better choice. If you can master the art of observing without reacting, you will notice something incredible. People will change around you. They will feel your presence, your steadiness. They will see that you do not fall into the same patterns of argument and chaos. And they will begin to respect your silence. True wisdom does not shout. It does not argue. It does not try to prove itself. It simply exists, calm and unshaken, like a mountain in the wind. Be that mountain. Watch everything. React to nothing. Let silence be your power. Embracing stillness, finding strength in silence. Close your eyes. Breathe in. Listen, not to the outside world, but to the space within. Do you hear it? The silence between your thoughts? That space is where true strength is found. The mind that is still is the mind that sees clearly. Most people fear stillness. They fill their days with noise, movement, distractions. Always speaking, always reacting, always chasing the next thing. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you sit, breathe, and simply allow yourself to be? At first, it feels strange. The mind resists. It wants to speak, to move, to fill the silence with anything but itself. But if you wait, if you truly allow yourself to enter that stillness, something shifts. In Buddhism, stillness is not laziness. It is not emptiness. It is awareness. A calm lake reflects the sky with perfect clarity, but a disturbed lake distorts the image. The same is true of the mind. When we are still, we see things as they truly are. We are no longer controlled by emotions, no longer pulled by the endless tides of desire and fear. Have you ever watched a tree stand silent in a storm? The wind howls, the rain falls, yet the tree does not fight. It does not complain. It bends, but it does not break. That is the power of stillness. When chaos surrounds you, when life throws its storms your way, will you panic? Or will you stand firm, rooted in silence? There is great strength in silence. When someone insults you, silence keeps your dignity intact. When anger rises, silence stops you from saying words you will regret. When the world pushes you to react, silence gives you the space to choose your response. To be still is to be in control, not of others, but of yourself. But to embrace stillness, you must first befriend it. Sit with it. Let the discomfort come, let the mind race, let the restlessness bubble up. Do nothing. Just observe. The mind is like a restless child, always wanting to run. But if you watch without judgment, without trying to stop it, the mind will settle on its own. Silence is not just about speaking less. It is about listening more, listening to the breath, to the body, to the thoughts that rise and fall. It is about hearing what is beneath the noise, what has always been there but was drowned out by the chaos of the world. When you are truly still, you begin to notice things. The way your breath moves through your body, the subtle tension in your hands, the quiet hum of life that is always present but so often ignored. In stillness, the world becomes alive in a way that words cannot capture. A Zen master once said, "When the mouth is closed, the mind opens." There is wisdom in this. The less you speak, the more you hear. The less you react, the more you understand. The less you chase, the more life reveals itself to you. But silence is not just for the meditation hall. It is a practice for everyday life. When someone speaks, truly listen. Do not wait for your turn to talk. Just listen. When faced with a difficult decision, do not rush to act. Sit in stillness. Let the answer arise naturally. When emotions overwhelm you, do not drown in them. Step back. Watch them, but do not become them. Stillness is a mirror. It shows you who you really are, beyond the roles, beyond the noise, beyond the endless distractions. And sometimes, what it shows is uncomfortable. But that is the path. To see yourself clearly, without illusion. To face what arises with courage. To let go of what no longer serves you. The world will not understand your silence. People will ask why you are so quiet. Why you do not react like everyone else. Why you choose stillness over chaos. But you will know. You will feel the strength that silence brings. The clarity. The peace. And in time, they too will see. A still mind is unshakable. It does not mean you do not feel. It does not mean you do not care. It means you are not controlled by every passing thought, every fleeting emotion. It means you have found something deeper, something the world cannot take away. The greatest masters did not speak often. When they did, their words carried weight, not because they were loud, but because they were born from silence. The less you say, the more meaning your words will hold. The quieter you are, the louder your presence becomes. In stillness, you meet yourself. Not the self shaped by society, by expectations, by fear, but the self that has always been there, waiting in the silence. Breathe in. Listen. The silence is speaking. Are you ready to hear it? While less talking leads to deeper understanding. Sit with me for a moment. Let your breath settle. Let the mind slow down. There is no rush, no need to fill this space with words. Just be here in silence. Now, ask yourself, how often do you speak just to fill the emptiness? How often do you talk because silence feels uncomfortable? Words pour out, explanations are given, opinions are formed, but in the end, what remains? Have you truly understood, or have you only spoken? In the world of noise, silence is rare. People believe that speaking makes them wise, that talking proves intelligence. But have you noticed? The wisest ones speak the least. They do not waste words. They listen. They observe. And when they finally speak, their words carry weight, not because they are loud, but because they come from deep understanding. The mind that speaks too much is a restless mind. It is filled with thoughts that have not yet settled. It rushes to respond, eager to be heard. But in this eagerness, it misses the most important thing, understanding. A person who talks too much often listens too little. And without listening, how can there be true knowledge? Think of a river. A calm river reflects everything around it clearly, the sky, the trees, the birds above. But a river that is disturbed by constant ripples loses its reflection. It cannot see beyond its own movement. The mind is the same. A mind that is always speaking, always reacting, is like a disturbed river. It cannot see clearly. It only sees its own disturbance. But when it becomes still, when words slow down, then clarity appears. Understanding arises. This is why, in Zen practice, we speak less. It is not because words have no value. Words are powerful, but they must be used wisely, like a sharpened sword that is drawn only when needed. If a sword is swung carelessly, it harms. If words are used without thought, they do the same. In life, you will meet many kinds of people. Some speak endlessly, yet say nothing. Others say little, yet their words stay with you forever. Why? Because those who understand do not need to prove anything. They do not speak just to be heard. They speak only when there is something worth saying. If you want to truly understand others, speak less. Give space for silence. Let others fill it. When someone talks, do not rush to reply. Do not wait for your turn to speak. Just listen. Not to respond, not to argue, but to truly hear. When you do this, something remarkable happens. You start to see beyond words. You notice the emotions behind them, the pauses, the hesitations, the unsaid words. And in that space, real understanding is born. A student once asked a Zen master, "Why do you not answer my questions immediately?" The master smiled and said, "Because when the mind is quiet, the answer comes by itself." There is great wisdom in waiting and allowing space. Have you ever noticed that the best answers come not when you force them, but when you let them arrive naturally? This is the power of silence. It allows wisdom to grow, to settle deep within. When we talk too much, we cover up this wisdom. We drown it in noise. But when we step back, when we let silence do its work, understanding blossoms. People often think that silence in conversation is awkward. But awkwardness only comes when we resist it. When we embrace silence, it becomes powerful. A moment of silence in a conversation can say more than 1,000 words. It shows presence. It shows depth. It creates connection without effort. In the old Zen monasteries, young monks were taught to answer questions in as few words as possible. Not because they were discouraged from speaking, but because they were taught to speak only what was necessary. One day, a monk asked his master, "What is wisdom?" The master simply raised his hand and pointed to the sky. Nothing more. And in that silent gesture, the monk understood more than words could ever explain. In life, you will face moments where you are tempted to speak, to explain, to defend, to prove yourself. But ask yourself, do these words add value? Or are they just noise? Sometimes, silence itself is the most powerful response. When someone is angry, silence can diffuse their fire. When someone is sad, silence can offer comfort beyond words. When someone is lost, silence can be a guide, a space where they find their own answers. But if we fill every moment with words, we take away this power. We leave no room for true connection. Buddha once remained silent when asked deep philosophical questions. His silence was not ignorance, it was wisdom. He knew that some truths cannot be explained. They must be experienced. And in silence, experience deepens. Think about the times in your life when you have truly understood something, not because someone explained it, but because you felt it. The most profound realizations do not come from words. They come from awareness, from presence, from the quiet space where the mind finally listens. This is why less talking leads to deeper understanding. It is not about suppressing speech, but about using it wisely. It is about valuing silence as much as we value words. It is about recognizing that sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is say nothing at all. So today, try this practice. Speak less. Listen more. Let silence be your teacher. And see how, in that silence, your understanding grows deeper than ever before. Mindful speech. When to speak and when to stay silent. Words hold great power. They can heal or hurt, bring peace or create chaos. Every word spoken has energy, a ripple effect that reaches beyond what we can see. But have you ever noticed how often we speak without thinking? How many times have words left your mouth, only to wish you could take them back? A wise person knows that silence is not just the absence of speech, it is a choice. It is the wisdom of knowing when words are needed and when they are not. Speaking without awareness is like throwing stones into a still pond. The ripples spread far, and you cannot take them back. But choosing your words carefully is like placing a single drop of water into the pond, allowing it to blend in harmony. Buddhism teaches that speech should be mindful. The Buddha himself spoke only when necessary, and even then, his words were measured, full of wisdom. He understood that speech is a tool, one that should be used with care, not recklessly. Silence was never a weakness for him. It was a sign of deep understanding. Think about this. Why do we often feel the need to fill the silence? Why do we rush to answer, to explain, to prove something? Most of the time, we speak not because we must, but because we are uncomfortable with silence. We want to be heard, to be understood, to be validated. But in this endless speaking, do we truly listen? Imagine two people in conversation. One is silent, listening with full presence. The other speaks, but their words carry no weight. They are just noise, filling the air. Now imagine the opposite. A person who speaks only after deep thought, their words carrying meaning, spoken with clarity. Which one do you think has more power? When we speak too much, our words lose value. But when we speak with intention, people listen. They feel the depth in our words because they are rare, chosen with care. This is the power of mindful speech. There is an old Zen saying, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If a word does not pass all 3, it is better left unspoken. Imagine how much suffering could be avoided if people followed this simple wisdom. How many times have words been used as weapons? A careless remark, a thoughtless insult, an unnecessary complaint. These things create wounds that last long after the words have faded. And yet, silence has never hurt anyone. A moment of silence before speaking can prevent years of regret. But this does not mean we should always stay silent. There are times when words are needed, when speaking up brings justice, when kind words heal a wounded heart, when truth must be spoken. The key is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. A Zen master once told his students, the mouth is like a knife. If used without care, it will cut everything in its path. But if used wisely, it can prepare a feast. Speech is like this. It can divide people, or it can bring them together. It can create distance, or it can build bridges. Have you ever experienced the power of silence in an argument? When two people argue, emotions take over. Words become weapons, and no one truly listens. But if one person stops speaking, if they simply listen, the energy changes. The silence absorbs the anger, and suddenly, the argument loses its fire. This is the strength of silence. It does not fight, yet it wins. Buddhist monks take vows of silence for long periods, not because they dislike talking, but because they understand that silence reveals truth. When you do not speak, you hear more. Not just the words of others, but the voice of your own mind. And in that space, wisdom arises. Even in daily life, mindful speech can transform everything. Before responding to a message, pause. Before expressing an opinion, reflect. Before correcting someone, ask yourself, is it necessary? A second of silence can prevent a lifetime of misunderstanding. People often believe that speaking more makes them appear smarter, stronger, or more important. But in truth, wisdom is found in restraint. A person who speaks less but listens deeply is always more respected than one who speaks without thought. Imagine being in a room full of people, each one talking over the other. Their voices merge into a wall of noise. But then, one person stands in silence, observing, waiting. When they finally speak, the room falls quiet. Why? Because silence gave their words weight. This is the power of speaking less. The Buddha once said, better than 1,000 useless words is one word that brings peace. A single, well-chosen word has more impact than hours of mindless talking. So, how do we practice mindful speech? The first step is awareness. Notice your words. Are they necessary? Are they true? Are they spoken with kindness? The second step is patience. Before speaking, take a breath. Give yourself a moment to decide if words are needed. The third step is listening. True communication is not just about speaking. It is about hearing, understanding, and being present. A great leader, a great teacher, a great friend, they all have one thing in common. They listen more than they speak. They know that silence is not empty, it is full of wisdom. The world is full of noise, but you do not have to contribute to it. In silence, you will find clarity. In mindful speech, you will find power. And in listening, you will discover truth. The silent mind, how Buddhism teaches mental clarity. Close your eyes for a moment and listen, not to the noise around you, but to the space between sounds. What do you hear? Perhaps nothing. But within that nothingness lies something profound. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of clarity. In a world filled with endless chatter, both inside and outside our minds, silence has become rare. We wake up to noise, live through distractions, and go to sleep with restless thoughts. Our minds, like a cup filled to the brim, have no space for wisdom to enter. But when we empty the cup, when we embrace silence, we create room for something deeper. The Buddha understood this well. He once said, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. But what is it that we are meant to hear? It is not just the world around us, but the truth within us. In silence, the mind settles. The thoughts that once ran wild slow down. The emotions that once controlled us lose their grip. The noise fades, and what remains is clarity. Imagine walking through a muddy path after heavy rain. Every step you take stirs the mud, making it impossible to see through the water. This is how most minds operate, constantly moving, constantly clouded. But if you stop walking, if you wait, something magical happens. The mud begins to settle, and the water becomes clear. This is the power of silence. It allows the mind to settle, revealing what was always there but hidden beneath the surface. Many people fear silence. They equate it with loneliness, boredom, or even emptiness. But silence is not empty. It is full of understanding, full of peace, full of awareness. The only reason it feels uncomfortable is because we are so used to running from ourselves. We fill our days with distractions, our conversations with unnecessary words, and our minds with endless thoughts. But what if we stopped? What if we allowed ourselves to sit in silence, to witness our thoughts without chasing them? There is a story of a disciple who came to his Zen master and asked, "Master, how do I find peace?" The master smiled and replied, "Be silent." The disciple thought for a moment and said, "I understand, but what should I do while I am silent?" The master gently placed a finger on his lips, signaling him to stop asking. The answer was in the silence itself. Silence is not something we do, it is something we become. When we cultivate silence, we create space between our thoughts. We begin to see reality as it is, not as our restless minds distort it. We start noticing things we never paid attention to, the way the wind moves the leaves, the rhythm of our breath, the way emotions arise and fade like waves in the ocean. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a mirror. When it is covered with dust, it cannot reflect clearly. But when we wipe away the dust, when we remove the clutter of unnecessary thoughts and words, the mirror reveals the world exactly as it is. Silence is the act of cleaning that mirror. It is the practice of seeing without distortion, of thinking without confusion, of living with awareness. But silence is not just about external quietness, it is about inner stillness. One can be in the loudest marketplace and still have a silent mind. Likewise, one can sit alone in a quiet room and still have a mind filled with noise. True silence is not about removing sound, it is about removing unnecessary thoughts. It is about creating a space within where wisdom can arise naturally. Think of a candle in a windy room. No matter how bright it burns, the flame flickers and struggles. But if you close the windows, if you block the wind, the flame stands tall, unwavering. This is how the mind works. When surrounded by distractions, it wavers. But in silence, it becomes steady. It shines with clarity, illuminating everything around it. The world values loudness. People believe that speaking more makes them wiser, that expressing every thought gives them importance. But the greatest minds in history, the wisest beings, understood the opposite. They knew that silence holds power, that in restraint lies strength. That true understanding comes not from speaking, but from listening. Buddhist monks practice noble silence. They go days, weeks, even months without unnecessary speech, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand the value of saying nothing. They know that when the mind is silent, the truth speaks. They train themselves to observe before reacting, to listen before answering, to understand before judging. This is not an easy practice. At first, silence feels strange. The mind resists. Thoughts flood in, demanding attention. But with time, something changes. The mind starts to relax. The thoughts become less urgent. The silence that once felt empty now feels full. You begin to hear the whispers of wisdom that were always there, drowned out by the noise of daily life. Try this. The next time you feel the urge to speak, pause. Just for a moment. Feel the space before words. In that space lies a choice. Do you speak out of habit, or do you speak with awareness? Do you react impulsively, or do you respond with understanding? Silence gives you control over your own mind. It allows you to move through life with intention, rather than reaction. Many conflicts in life arise because people speak without thinking. Arguments escalate because no one pauses to listen. But a silent mind changes everything. It sees through anger. It recognizes the emotions behind words. It understands that sometimes the best response is no response at all. Silence is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is not avoidance. It is awareness. It does not mean submission, it means control. When you master silence, you master yourself. The Buddha once held up a flower before his disciples and said nothing. Many waited for an explanation. Only one disciple smiled, for he understood. Some truths cannot be spoken, they must be realized. In your own life, start small. Take moments of silence in your day. Before responding, pause. Before forming an opinion, observe. Before filling the space with words, ask yourself, do they add value? Or is silence the better choice? When you embrace silence, you will notice a change. Your mind will feel lighter. Your awareness will sharpen. The things that once disturbed you will lose their power. You will move through life with calmness, clarity, and an unshakable sense of peace. The world may not understand your silence, but it will feel its impact. Because true silence is not about staying quiet, it is about speaking only when necessary and with full awareness. Let your mind become like still water, reflecting everything with clarity. Let your words be like rare jewels, precious and well-chosen. Let your silence speak louder than noise ever could. The power of solitude, silence as a path to self-discovery. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen, not to the world outside, but to the silence within. Do you hear it? Or is it drowned out by the endless chatter of your thoughts? Most people fear silence because, in its depth, they are left alone with themselves. But what if I told you that in this very aloneness lies your greatest discovery? Many people misunderstand solitude. They think it means loneliness, isolation, or even sadness. But solitude is not about being away from people. It is about being with yourself. It is a space where you can listen to your own heart without interference. A place where you are not defined by the voices of others but by your own truth. The Buddha often withdrew into deep solitude. He sat beneath trees, walked alone, and spent time in silence. Not because he disliked people, but because he knew that true wisdom arises in stillness. He understood that when the world is quiet, the mind becomes clear. Look at a lake. When the water is disturbed, it is impossible to see through it. But when it becomes still, everything beneath is revealed. Your mind is the same. In the noise of daily life, your thoughts are scattered, your emotions clouded. But in silence, everything settles. You begin to see yourself as you truly are. People fear being alone because they do not know what they will find. They have spent years distracting themselves, scrolling through endless screens, filling their days with noise, avoiding quiet moments. But why? Because silence exposes everything. Your fears, your regrets, your unspoken thoughts, all rise to the surface when you are alone. But this is not something to fear. This is your chance to understand yourself. Many run from solitude because they are afraid of their own minds. They say, I don't like being alone. My thoughts are too loud. But silence does not create these thoughts. It only reveals what is already there. It is like turning on a light in a dark room. What you see may be messy at first, but once you see it, you can clean it. There is great power in learning to be alone. When you are comfortable in your own presence, you stop depending on others for happiness. You are no longer controlled by the fear of being left out, the need for validation, or the pressure to always be connected. You become whole within yourself. Have you ever watched a tree standing alone in a vast field? It does not seek attention, yet it stands strong. It does not need to explain itself, yet it provides shade. It does not move, yet it grows. This is the power of solitude. In silence, you grow roots. You become stable, unshaken by the winds of the world. Some of the greatest minds in history understood this. The Buddha meditated in solitude to reach enlightenment. Poets and philosophers retreated into quiet spaces to find inspiration. Even in nature, animals instinctively seek solitude when they need to heal. Silence is not emptiness. It is a sanctuary where transformation begins. Many people search for answers outside themselves. They look to others for guidance, hoping someone will tell them what to do. But the answers you seek are not in books, not in the words of others, not in the distractions of the world. They are within you, waiting to be heard. Silence is the key that unlocks them. Some say, but I don't have time to be alone. They fill every moment with noise, music, conversations, endless activities. But ask yourself, is this truly living? Or is it escaping? A mind that is always occupied never has space to breathe. Like a cup constantly being filled, it overflows, unable to hold anything new. Solitude empties the cup, making room for clarity, insight, and peace. Think about the moments in your life when you felt truly at peace. Were they in the middle of chaos? Or were they in quiet moments, watching the sunset, sitting by a river, or simply being with yourself? Peace is not found in doing more. It is found in being still. If you have never embraced solitude, start small. Spend just a few moments each day in silence. No phone, no distractions, just you and your breath. At first, it may feel strange. Your mind may resist, throwing thoughts at you like waves against a shore. But if you stay, if you allow the silence to settle, something incredible happens. You begin to see yourself clearly. In Buddhist practice, monks spend years in silence, not as a punishment, but as a way to refine their minds. They do not speak unless necessary. They listen deeply. They walk with awareness. In their silence, they cultivate wisdom. Imagine if you brought even a small part of this practice into your own life. Imagine the peace that would come from simply allowing yourself to be. Solitude does not mean isolation from the world. You can be surrounded by people and still carry silence within you. It is an inner state, a way of being fully present without needing constant validation. When you are comfortable in your own presence, you stop fearing loneliness. Instead, you begin to cherish the time you have with yourself. Some of the strongest people you will ever meet are those who are at peace in their solitude. They do not need attention to feel valued. They do not seek approval to feel worthy. They are centered within themselves, carrying a quiet strength that speaks louder than words. If you can sit in silence without reaching for distractions, you have already won half the battle. If you can embrace solitude without fearing your own mind, you have discovered a great secret. In this world full of noise, few people ever truly meet themselves. But those who do, find something priceless: self-mastery, clarity, and unshakable peace. Let the world be noisy. Let others rush, speak, and seek. But you, learn to sit in silence. Learn to be alone, not with loneliness, but with presence. For in this silence, you will hear the only voice that truly matters, the voice of your own soul. Mastering emotional control through silence. There is a great power hidden in silence. It is not just the absence of words. It is the space where true understanding begins. When you learn to be silent, you gain control over the one thing that often causes the most suffering: your emotions. Imagine a moment of anger. Your heart beats faster. Your mind fills with fiery thoughts. Words rush to your tongue, ready to spill out in frustration. But in that very moment, if you stay silent, something changes. The anger does not control you anymore. You begin to see it for what it is, just a passing storm. And like all storms, it will pass. Most people react instantly to their emotions. They speak when they are angry. They argue when they are hurt. They complain when they are frustrated. But words spoken in such moments often lead to regret. How many times have you said something in anger, only to wish later that you had remained silent? Silence gives you power. It gives you time to think, to understand, to choose your response wisely. The Buddha once said that just as a strong rock remains unmoved by the wind, a wise person remains unmoved by praise or blame. This is the power of inner silence. When someone insults you, your first instinct may be to defend yourself, to argue, to prove them wrong. But what happens when you say nothing? The words lose their power over you. They're just sounds in the air. They come and go, but you remain untouched. This is not weakness, it is strength. It takes great courage to stay silent when provoked. In Buddhism, there is a teaching that compares words to arrows. Once an arrow is shot, it cannot be taken back. Words are the same. Once spoken, they cannot be undone. They can wound deeply. But silence is like a shield. It protects you and others from unnecessary harm. Think of the last time you had an argument. Maybe you felt the urge to prove your point, to make the other person see things your way. But what if, instead of reacting, you simply listened? What if you stayed silent, allowing the emotions to settle before speaking? The entire situation would have changed. Silence has the power to transform conflict into understanding. This is why monks practice silence, not just with their words, but with their minds. They train themselves to observe their emotions without reacting to them. When anger arises, they do not fight it. They simply watch it, knowing that it will pass. And in that moment of silent observation, the anger loses its grip. You do not have to be a monk to practice this. In your daily life, you can use silence as a tool to control your emotions. When someone irritates you, instead of reacting immediately, take a deep breath and say nothing. When you feel frustrated, sit in silence for a moment before making a decision. When sadness overwhelms you, embrace the quiet and allow yourself to feel it without resistance. Silence does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means understanding them without being controlled by them. It means giving yourself the space to respond rather than react. It means choosing peace over unnecessary conflict. Look at the world around you. So much suffering comes from people who cannot control their emotions. They lash out in anger. They drown in sadness. They let fear guide their actions. But those who master silence master themselves. They remain calm even in chaos. They do not allow others to disturb their inner peace. There is a Zen story about a man who was insulted by another. The man remained silent. Someone asked him, "Why didn't you respond?" He smiled and said, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, who does it belong to?" The answer is simple: the gift remains with the giver. In the same way, if someone offers you anger and you do not accept it, it remains theirs. It does not become yours. This is the power of silence. It protects you. It frees you. It gives you control over your own mind. And when you have control over your mind, nothing in the world can shake you. Think about this the next time you feel overwhelmed by emotions. Before reacting, pause. Before speaking, reflect. Before engaging in conflict, observe. You will see that most problems are not as big as they seem. They only grow when we feed them with words and reactions. But in silence, they lose their power. Mastering emotional control through silence is not about becoming emotionless. It is about understanding emotions deeply, without letting them dictate your actions. It is about choosing how you respond, rather than being a slave to impulse. It is about finding peace in a world full of noise. The next time life tests you, remember this: silence is not emptiness. It is full of wisdom, full of strength, full of peace. Use it wisely, and you will find that nothing can disturb your inner calm. Deep listening, the hidden power behind true silence. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of something far greater: awareness, patience, and deep listening. Most people hear, but very few listen. There is a difference. Hearing is passive. It happens automatically. But listening, that is something you must choose to do. It requires attention, presence, and an open heart. Imagine this. You are speaking to someone, pouring out your thoughts, your worries, your emotions. But instead of truly listening, they are waiting for their turn to talk. They nod, they say yes, and but their mind is elsewhere. Can you feel the difference? Can you sense the emptiness in that exchange? Now, picture another moment. This time, someone listens to you, not just to your words, but to everything beneath them. They are silent, yet fully present. Their eyes are focused, their energy calm. You can feel that they are not just waiting to respond. They are absorbing everything you say, holding space for your thoughts without judgment. And suddenly, something happens. You feel lighter, understood, heard. That is the power of deep listening. It does not require you to be wise or have all the answers. It only asks for one thing: your silence, your patience, your willingness to be present for another. The Buddha once said, "When words are both true and kind, they can change the world." But what he did not say, yet demonstrated throughout his life, is that silence, when combined with deep listening, can heal in ways words never could. Think about the last time you had a conversation. Were you truly listening? Or were you forming your next sentence while the other person was still speaking? Most people do not listen to understand. They listen to reply. They listen with their mouths, not with their hearts. A wise person listens deeply, not just to words but to the emotions beneath them. When someone is angry, they may say harsh things, but if you listen closely, you will hear their pain. When someone is silent, they may not be ignoring you. They may be struggling with emotions they cannot express. Deep listening allows you to hear not just what is spoken, but what is left unsaid. In Buddhism, listening is an art. The Zen master listens to the student's question, but he does not rush to answer. He lets silence fill the space. He allows the student to reflect, to discover meaning in their own words. Because true wisdom does not come from answers. It comes from understanding. The greatest listeners in history were not those who spoke the most, but those who remained silent when it mattered. The Buddha himself often responded to deep philosophical questions with silence. Not because he did not know the answer, but because he knew that some truths can only be realized in stillness. Silence creates space for understanding. When you listen deeply, you do not interrupt. You do not rush. You let the words settle. You absorb not just the sound, but the energy behind it. This is why in Zen teachings, silence is considered a gift. It is not empty. It is full of presence. When you master the art of listening, everything changes. Your relationships deepen. People feel drawn to you, not because of the words you say, but because of the way you listen. They feel safe with you. They feel respected. And in return, they open up in ways they never would with someone who only hears but never listens. If you wish to practice deep listening, start today. The next time someone speaks to you, be fully present. Do not think about what to say next. Do not let your mind wander. Just listen. Absorb. Let them finish completely before you respond. Feel the silence between words. Let that silence do the work. You will be surprised. When you listen this way, people will tell you things they never told anyone before. They will feel seen, understood, and in that moment, your silence will become more powerful than 1,000 spoken words. Deep listening is not just about others, it is also about yourself. Most people live in constant noise, never pausing to listen to their own thoughts. They fill every moment with distractions, music, conversations, endless scrolling, because they are afraid of silence. But silence is not the enemy. It is the gateway to clarity. Take a moment now. Close your eyes. Listen. What do you hear? The sound of your breath. The faint noises around you. But beneath that, there is something deeper, the sound of your own presence. Your awareness. The part of you that is always there, waiting to be heard. When you learn to listen to yourself, you stop being controlled by external noise. You stop reacting impulsively. You develop patience, inner peace, and wisdom. You begin to understand yourself, your emotions, your desires, and your fears. And when you understand yourself, you understand the world. The practice of deep listening transforms everything. It turns ordinary conversations into moments of connection. It turns conflicts into understanding. It turns loneliness into presence. In Buddhist monasteries, silence is a way of life. Monks do not speak unless necessary, not because they reject communication, but because they understand that true connection does not always require words. They listen deeply, to each other, to nature, to themselves. And in that silence, they find wisdom. If you wish to change your life, start with this simple practice. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being. Let your silence create space for others. Let it create space for yourself. And in that space, you will discover something profound. Silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of answers, full of life. How silence can transform your relationships and communication. Listen carefully. The world is always speaking, but few truly hear. People talk to be heard, to prove a point, to fill the silence. But in doing so, they often miss the deeper conversation. Words can connect, but they can also create distance. Silence, on the other hand, has the power to bring people closer than words ever could. Think about the last time you had a disagreement with someone. Maybe it was a friend, a partner, or a family member. The moment emotions ran high, words came fast. Defending, blaming, explaining, justifying. But did all those words really help? Or did they only make the distance greater? Now, imagine a different approach. Imagine if, instead of rushing to reply, you simply paused. You listened, not just to the words, but to the silence between them. You observed their body language, the emotion in their voice, the energy behind their words. And instead of reacting, you let silence do its work. At first, the silence might feel heavy, uncomfortable even, but stay with it. The moment you stop filling the space with unnecessary words, something changes. The other person feels heard. Their anger softens, their walls come down. Silence does not mean you are weak or that you have nothing to say. It means you are present. You are aware. And that awareness changes everything. In relationships, silence is a forgotten language. We think love is about saying the right things, making grand gestures, proving our affection with words. But real connection is not in what you say, it's in how well you listen. Have you ever sat in silence with someone and felt completely understood? No words were spoken, yet everything was clear. That is the power of silence. Buddhism teaches that mindful silence is one of the greatest gifts you can offer in any relationship. When you listen without waiting to reply, when you allow space for others to express themselves fully, you give them something rare, true presence. Most people are not really listening. They are simply waiting for their turn to speak. But when you are silent, fully engaged, something profound happens. The other person senses it. They feel seen, heard, valued. This is not just about avoiding arguments. It is about deepening every connection in your life. Silence allows you to notice things you would otherwise miss. The slight hesitation in a friend's voice that reveals they are struggling, the unspoken sadness in a loved one's eyes, the small joys that words fail to capture. Even in the moments when you must speak, silence teaches you how. The less you talk, the more weight your words carry. When you are always speaking, your voice becomes just another sound in the noise of the world. But when you speak rarely, with thought and care, people listen. They know your words have meaning. Many times, silence saves relationships that words would destroy. Think of moments when anger takes over, when frustration builds, when the urge to say something hurtful is strong. A single unnecessary word can wound deeply, and once spoken, it cannot be taken back. But silence can cool the fire before it burns everything down. There is a Zen teaching that says, "Do not speak unless it improves upon silence." Before you say something, ask yourself, does this need to be said? Will it bring understanding, or will it bring more confusion? Will it heal, or will it harm? If the answer is not clear, let silence be your answer. The greatest teachers speak the least. The wisest people are often the quietest in the room, not because they do not have thoughts, but because they understand the value of words and the even greater value of silence. Imagine if, in every conversation, you practiced this wisdom. Instead of talking just to fill the space, you waited. You allowed moments of silence to guide the dialogue. What would change? People would trust you more. They would open up to you in ways they never have before. They would see you as someone who does not just hear, but truly listens. Even in love, silence holds deep meaning. Words can express affection, but silence can make love felt in a way words never could. Sitting together, watching the world go by, no need for conversation, just presence. That is a love that does not rely on performance, but on true connection. Friendships, too, are tested in silence. Some friendships require constant talking, constant entertainment. But the strongest ones? They thrive in the quiet. Two friends sitting together, saying nothing, yet feeling completely at peace. That is a bond beyond words. Silence does not mean isolation. It does not mean avoiding communication. It means making communication more meaningful. It means replacing empty words with thoughtful presence. It means understanding that sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful response. There is an old Buddhist story about a student who asked his master a deep question about enlightenment. The master simply looked at him and remained silent. The student waited, expecting an answer, but none came. Frustrated, he asked again. Still, the master said nothing. After a long time, the student finally understood. Enlightenment is not something that can be explained with words. Some truths are only known in silence. This is the lesson silence teaches us. The most important things in life, love, wisdom, peace, understanding, are not found in talking. They are found in listening, in being present, in letting silence do the work words cannot. Try this today. In your next conversation, pause. Do not rush to fill the silence. Do not speak just for the sake of speaking. Instead, listen, observe, be present. See how it changes everything. And remember, silence is not empty. It is full of everything that truly matters. Buddhist monastic silence. Lessons from the masters. Sit down. Breathe. Listen. Do you hear that? The silence between my words? The space between your thoughts? That silence is not empty. It is alive. It is speaking to you, if only you would listen. For thousands of years, Buddhist monks have embraced silence as a way of life. They do not see silence as the absence of sound, but as the presence of awareness. In their monasteries, words are not wasted. Speech is used only when necessary. Every word carries weight. Every pause has meaning. They know that in silence, the deepest truths are revealed. But in your world, silence is rare. People fear it. They fill every moment with noise, talking, scrolling, reacting. Afraid of what they might hear in the quiet, they distract themselves. But what if you stopped running from silence? What if, instead of fearing it, you welcomed it? Let me take you to a monastery. Imagine walking through its halls. The air is still, the atmosphere peaceful. Monks move with calmness, their footsteps light, their minds steady. No one rushes. No one speaks unnecessarily. There is no need to prove anything, no need to impress anyone. Everything is done with mindfulness. Morning begins before the sun rises. In complete silence, the monks wake, meditate, and prepare for the day. No alarms, no chatter, just the soft rustling of robes and the gentle sound of breath. They sit in meditation, embracing the silence, listening to the whispers of their own minds. At first, thoughts come rushing in, but as the silence deepens, the mind settles. Stillness takes over. Clarity arises. Their daily tasks are done with the same quiet awareness. When they eat, they do not speak. They do not watch TV or check their phones. They taste every bite, aware of the food nourishing their bodies. When they walk, they feel the earth beneath their feet. When they clean, they do so with gratitude, knowing that every action is a form of meditation. Now, think about how you live. How often do you eat while distracted? How often do you walk without noticing your surroundings? How often do you speak without thinking? The monks have learned that silence is not just about not talking. It is about being present in everything you do. In their silence, monks develop deep listening. When they do speak, they listen first. They do not interrupt. They do not form their next sentence while the other person is still talking. They absorb the words fully, without judgment. And when they respond, they do so with thoughtfulness, not just to be heard, but to truly connect. Have you ever noticed how most people listen? They don't really listen. They hear words, but their minds are elsewhere, waiting for their turn to speak. But real listening requires silence, not just outer silence, but inner silence. A quiet mind can truly understand. Monks also know the power of silence in conflict. When emotions rise, they do not argue. They do not let anger control their words. They pause. They breathe. They let silence cool the fire. And in that silence, they see things clearly. They understand that anger is like a passing storm. If you do not fuel it with words, it fades on its own. Have you ever been in an argument where silence changed everything? Where instead of reacting, you paused? That moment of quiet can shift the energy completely. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful response. It speaks louder than anger, louder than defensiveness. It shows control. It shows wisdom. Monks also practice noble silence, periods where they do not speak at all, not even in their thoughts. They retreat from the world, entering deep meditation. In that silence, they touch something beyond words. They experience a peace that cannot be explained, only felt. This silence is not lonely. It is full. It is rich. It is complete. But in your world, silence is avoided. People fear being alone with their thoughts. They turn on music, TV, social media, anything to escape the quiet. But monks have learned that the mind, when left in silence, reveals its truth. At first, it may be uncomfortable, but if you stay with it, you start to see yourself clearly. You begin to understand who you truly are. Silence is also a teacher. It teaches patience. Have you ever noticed how those who speak the most often say the least? And those who say little often hold the most wisdom? This is because wisdom grows in silence. When you are quiet, you observe more. You notice things others miss. You see the truth behind words, behind actions. You become more aware, more present. Silence also teaches discipline. Monks do not speak just because they feel like it. They do not fill silence with empty words. They wait. They consider. They speak only when necessary. Imagine if you did the same. Imagine if you spoke only when your words truly added value. How much more powerful would your voice become? But silence is not just for monks. It is for you. You do not need to live in a monastery to practice silence. You can bring it into your life right now. Try this. Next time you feel the urge to speak, pause. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Is this kind? Is this true? If not, let it go. Feel the power in that choice. Or try this. Set aside time for noble silence in your day. Maybe just 10 minutes. No talking, no distractions, just you and the silence. See what happens. Watch how your mind reacts. Notice the thoughts that come up. Over time, you will find that silence becomes a friend, not a stranger. Even in conversations, you can practice silence. When someone speaks, listen fully. Do not rush to respond. Let their words settle before you answer. Feel how this deepens your connections, how it brings a new level of understanding. And most importantly, learn to be silent with yourself. In the quiet moments of your life, do not run from your thoughts. Sit with them. Face them. Understand them. This is where true wisdom begins. Monks do not practice silence because they have to. They do it because they know its power. They have seen how silence transforms the mind, the heart, the soul. They know that in silence, the greatest truths are found. And now, you know it too. Let silence speak. The final transformation. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Let the world fade away for a moment. Listen, not to the noise around you, but to the silence within. Do you hear it? That stillness, that quiet presence, it is not empty. It is alive. It holds answers you have been searching for, wisdom beyond words, and peace that no noise can bring. You have walked this journey of silence. You have seen how it can change the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you connect with the world. Now, let us reach the final step together. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is a presence, a force, a space where truth reveals itself. When you stop speaking for the sake of speaking, when you stop reacting to everything around you, something powerful happens. You begin to see. You begin to understand. Think back to all the moments in life when words failed. When an apology felt empty, when explanations did not make things better, when someone's presence meant more than anything they could say. Those moments were not weak. They were strong. Because silence, when embraced fully, is not passive, it is powerful. A Zen master once sat with his student under a tree. The student was full of questions. "Master, what is enlightenment? What is the meaning of life? How do I find peace?" The master simply closed his eyes and sat in silence. The student waited, growing impatient. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, the student, frustrated, asked, "Why won't you answer me?" The master slowly opened his eyes and smiled. "I have answered. You just haven't learned to listen." This is the lesson we often forget. Silence speaks. But do we listen? Look around. The world is full of noise. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone wants to be heard. Social media, news, conversations, all filled with endless words. But how often do people actually listen? How often do they pause, reflect, and let silence guide them? Silence is not about withdrawing from the world. It is about seeing it more clearly. When you stop filling every moment with noise, you start noticing things, your thoughts, your emotions, the energy of the people around you. You begin to hear the unspoken words, the emotions behind what is being said. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone was speaking, but you could tell their heart was saying something else? That is because true listening is not just about words. It is about presence. It is about feeling the silence between the words, sensing what is unsaid. This is why silence is so important. It is not about ignoring life. It is about experiencing it on a deeper level. Buddhism teaches that silence is one of the greatest teachers. The Buddha himself often remained silent when asked about things beyond words, because he knew that some truths can only be understood in stillness. Words can explain, but they can also mislead. They can describe, but they can never fully capture reality. Silence, on the other hand, allows you to see things as they are. When you are silent, your mind becomes clear. The endless chatter fades. You begin to notice what truly matters. Your worries, your fears, your endless thoughts, they no longer control you. You gain space. And in that space, you find freedom. But silence is not always easy. It requires patience. It requires trust. It requires letting go of the need to always have something to say. Many people fear silence because they do not know what they will find in it. But this fear is an illusion. The more you sit with silence, the more you realize it is not empty. It is full of wisdom, full of peace, full of the answers you have been looking for. Think of the wisest people you have met in life. Were they the loudest? Or were they the ones who spoke less? But when they did, every word carried weight. True wisdom does not come from saying more. It comes from knowing when to say nothing at all. In relationships, silence can heal. Sometimes, the best way to support someone is not to give advice, not to offer words, but simply to be there, to hold space, to listen. A silent presence can bring more comfort than 1,000 words. In conflicts, silence can transform. Instead of reacting, instead of escalating, silence allows emotions to settle. It gives people a chance to think, to understand, to let go of anger. It creates space for resolution instead of more division. In personal growth, silence is where you meet yourself. Without distractions, without noise, you see who you truly are. You face your thoughts, your emotions, your deepest truths. It can be uncomfortable at first, but if you embrace it, silence becomes your greatest ally. There's a story of a monk who took a vow of silence for 10 years. When he finally spoke, his first words were, "Nothing was ever missing." That is the essence of silence. It shows you that you already have everything you need. Peace, wisdom, understanding, they were always within you. You just needed silence to hear them. So now, as we come to the end of this journey, ask yourself, can you embrace silence? Can you allow it to be your teacher? Can you trust that not every moment needs words, that not every thought needs to be spoken, that sometimes the greatest transformation happens in stillness? The answer does not lie in what I say. It lies in what you experience. It lies in the moments when you choose to pause, to listen, to be fully present. It lies in the space between words, in the quiet understanding that grows when you stop filling every moment with sound. This is not the end. This is the beginning. A new way of living, a new way of thinking, a path of presence, of wisdom, of true inner peace. There are so many views on this channel, but only 0.2% subscribe. If this journey has touched you, if you have found even a small piece of wisdom in these words, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. And most importantly, share your thoughts in the comments. Let your voice be heard, not through noise, but through meaningful presence. Now, take one more deep breath. Feel the silence within you. Carry it with you, wherever you go. And remember, true power is not in speaking more, but in knowing when to stay silent.